Pick and Pay, came up with an ad featuring Rick Ross.
I like Pick and Pay.
And I wonder if you have an opinion on that particular campaign.
Maybe the messaging was not as clear.
This brings me to my burning question. How can brands adapt?
The world has never been this fast. But also, going into the future, the world will never be this slow ever again. I started writing letters. This will show you how old I am. Handwritten letters to advertising agents. Dear employer. And I remember my salary was going to be 750 Rand. And that was
700.
That was a lot of money.
Pat. It's Pat on brands. Watch how you branded, man. A pat on the back is a pat from the man. Better be branded, man. A pat from the pat is a pat on the brand.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to yet another exciting episode of the Pat on Brands podcast with me, Pat Mahlangu. Today we have a very special guest, one that I've been courting for a very, very long time, saying, please, Nondumiso, come to the podcast. But because she's a busy lady, we understand. And she travels quite a bit. She's a mom, but she's going to tell us all about that. If you're not aware, actually, we're recording on Saturday mornings, and I'm literally disrupting people's routines here. Nondumiso, welcome to the Pat on Brands podcast.
Thank you very much, Pat. And sorry it took so long for me to come here.
But, sometimes I always say when things, take this long, they always happen at the right time.
At the time they're meant to happen.
And also you're going to deliver a great show for our audience.
I'm looking forward to it. Thank you.
But so let's take it back where it all started, when it comes to marketing, right? It's something that you always, wanted to do when you're growing up in the East Rand, or it's something that, you just stumbled upon?
I definitely stumbled upon marketing. I always, number one, I wasn't clear what I wanted to study post-matric, but my interests as a young girl were things like being a private investigator, because I read a lot of Nancy Drew books. And then later on, when I was in high school, I was very interested in psychology. At the time, actually, I was discouraged by an aunt who was a psychologist and said, don't go into psychology. But now, with hindsight, I realize how a lot of marketing has an element of psychology and just really understanding people and how people think and how they consume. So how I actually ended up in advertising is when I was in matric, part of what was business economics, now EMS. We're learning about business, advertising, and I started getting an interest in how business works and advertising. And I remember asking my elder sister, the eldest, she was studying with IMM at the time. And I asked her if South Africa had any advertising universities or if any universities actually offered advertising as a degree. And that's when she told me about AAA School of Advertising. And I applied. At the time, my father was very skeptical.
Like you fly by night school.
Like, what's that? I've never heard of it. And the only condition was that it had to have a 3-year degree for me to go there.
Got you.
And fortunately, they did. And I applied, and I made sure he drove me to the interview because there was an interview process before they could accept you into AAA. And that's how I got into advertising and later marketing.
Wow. Do you remember your first job?
Yes. I remember my first job very well because when I was doing my first year at AAA, the conversation in the country at the time was that people were finishing their degrees and were not able to get work because they were asked for experience. And it made me very uncomfortable that, okay, I'm studying.
It's crazy how that also still is the case.
20-something years later, it's exactly the same conversation. So when I was doing my first year at AAA, I started writing letters. Actually, this will show you how old I am. I took out a telephone directory because obviously I was studying advertising. I was hearing the names of advertising agencies. I found them on the telephone directory and I started writing letters, handwritten letters to advertising agents. Dear employer, dear hiring manager.
Sure.
I started writing letters to advertising agencies asking for a job.
Wow.
I was offering to work for free because I had negotiated with my parents since they were still taking care of my school fees and transport and so on. I asked them to continue funding me as I went down this road. And I was offering to work for free in the afternoons, obviously after lectures, and got a lot
Are you
of.
still staying at home? Or
I was still staying at home.
Okay.
I was still staying at home. We lived in Vosloorus in the East Rand. My father was a priest there. And I got one letter saying I must come in for an interview in Woodmead. The agency was called GTM at the time with Yossi Schwartz. He was the CEO there, the late Yossi Schwartz now. And I was offered a part-time job, afternoons, after work. And I remember my salary was going to be 750 Rand. But this was 1999. And that was
700.
That was a lot of money.
You blow it up on lunch now.
For someone who's staying at home, mom and dad are still working. I was the youngest. 750 Rand to go in between 1 and 5 every day was, I was a multimillionaire.
So you're living large.
I was living large. So that was my first professional job.
But obviously, since then, you've sort of transitioned, from agency to now obviously corporate.
No, 100%.
How did that come about? And what sort of informed that decision to say, okay, I've done a lot of agency work. Now I want to be on the other side. I want to be the one that's putting pressure.
I guess I'm very bossy. I always wanted to be the one who's giving instructions. So when I was studying, while I was still studying at AAA, AAA takes a very practical approach to how the world of advertising works. So they used to bring in clients, would come give us briefs on different subjects and would work as a team to bring that to life. And what happened is that my love for brand management grew there. And I then started working in advertising. So I worked for GTM at the time. Later, I worked for Huntler Scaris as well. And when I worked in the agency...
Did you work on the Nando's account?
Not at all, but the Nando's team sat next to us. So when I was at Huntler Scaris, we worked on MTN and we worked on SABC, which is how I ended up working at SABC.
So SABC was a naughty client.
No, not at all. Actually, I was a very forward, what's it called? You know how, chacharach.
Yeah, chacharach.
I was a very chacharach client service person who stopped one of the marketing managers at SABC at the time, Jerry Mufane, who's become a very good friend over the years. So you see, now I'm jumping forward. So how I transitioned to the client side is I had a love for brand management. And when I was working for Huntler Scaris and Jerry was marketing manager for SABC One, I literally stopped him in a passage.
During which time? Mzansi for sure? Which era?
Just before,
Simunye.
It was during Simunye, but I wasn't there yet. When I got there, Jerry was working on the brief for Mzansi for sure. And then we launched Mzansi for sure in 2004 because I joined SABC in 2003 March. So actually I worked on that brief both at agency and at client. So actually we launched Mzansi for sure later on in 2003, if I'm not mistaken now. So yes, I stopped Jerry in the passage. He hardly knew me because the clients that I
Because you were not allowed to engage with clients when you were junior.
And I was working on SABC 2, if I'm not mistaken, SABC Radio. So I didn't work on SABC 1. But I knew him walking through the passages of Huntler Scaris, and I saw him the one day. And I was just like, hi, I don't know you, but this is who I am. And I hear you might have a brand manager opening. And he said, unfortunately, they've just closed the role. Interviews are done, blah, blah, blah. But I can just send my CV through HR. And if there's an opening, then let me know. Of course, I sent my CV through, forgot about it, thought if they found someone, move on with my world. And they actually
in those times, did you have email? Did you send it through email?
This is 2002 now. So we did have email.
Okay.
This is 2002. I didn't have to handwrite. My CV was no longer handwritten.
Got you.
This was 2002, late 2002, and I sent in an email, got invited to an interview, interestingly enough, and it was a rigorous process. I remember when they used to do like you used to write almost a test, like a case study at SABC. And the day of the case study, there were so many ladies that came in, and I thought, oh my goodness, all these people. And I was one of the lucky few. I believe at the time, 2 of us were hired as brand managers. Whoa. Unfortunately, the other one didn't show up. She took another job. So I ended up being the only one who joined. But yes, that was my transition from advertising to client side.
Then from SABC, then...
I loved SABC, stayed with them for 7 years. Sure. But again, I'm the kind of person who I get very uncomfortable with comfort zone. I don't like being comfortable. I like to push myself. So at the time, I used to say, I don't want to box myself into being a broadcast marketer. But now looking back, I've spent 17 years of my career in broadcasting. So at heart, I am a broadcast marketer. So worked with SABC for 7 years, from SABC One, SABC Sport. Then I left to join FNB in 2010. Sure. Worked for FNB.
I hear that was the most exciting time to be in marketing.
It was at SABC. Oh man. Well, especially working on the World Cup and all the Confederations Cup leading up to it. And you love my reason for leaving was I had just become a mother. So my twin girls were born in February 2010. Oh yeah. And
what day?
16th of February.
Oh, I was born on the 7th.
You're all February babies. So at the time, the pace was very fast. The organization was going through a lot of change. And I just wanted to give my children a little bit of time and focus, less traveling. And the role I held at FNB gave me that. Also, at the time, I just started my MBA. Sure. Yeah, I always like to put myself under pressure.
You're doing 3 MBAs.
100%.
Raising twins.
No 4. I stayed married. 4 MBAs. No, so in hindsight, you always look at these things like, why are you doing this to yourself? Why so much pressure? But it is what it is.
So you strike me as someone that really thrives under pressure.
Yeah, but it's a problem. Sometimes we shouldn't put ourselves under so much pressure.
But then we wouldn't grow.
We wouldn't grow. But sometimes I think we also need to enjoy the quiet times in our lives when we're not running around, when we're not stressed. Maybe I'm older and becoming a lot more philosophical, but I also just think it's good to put as much energy into your goals and to your career and to your family when you're younger. But I do think there comes a time when we must actually just enjoy the Saturday at home doing nothing.
But have you ever thought of doing your own thing?
I have, 100% have. I 100% have thought of branching out, doing my own thing. But there's something about the red race and the pressure in that corporate space that I quite enjoy. And I must be, I must be honest, I've had these conversations with friends, with family. Maybe that's my comfort zone, the corporate world, and navigating the complexity of the corporate world.
Got you. Because, actually, I have a friend that I was having a chat with. He's in corporate and he feels like it's not giving him that edge, in terms of just being busy, So the routine is sort of, starting to bore him a bit. But I said, dude, enter entrepreneurship at your own risk.
At your own risk. and so for me, it's not even a fear thing of entrepreneurship, but it's a passion thing.
Gotcha.
And I'm still passionate about the work that I'm doing in the corporate space. I'm still passionate about the brands that I get to work with. Yeah. And I think we should accept the places we love and the places where we are thriving in. Definitely, I'm proud of people like yourself who are entrepreneurs. I think you are made of steel.
Yeah.
I just think in the corporate world, we're made of a different kind of steel as well.
Yeah, the pressure is different,
True.
And also there's politics and there's other things that you have to navigate.
Yeah.
But talking about corporate and, just looking at the world broadly and times that we find ourselves in, we are living in what is called VUCA, which I think is a concept that was coined by the U.S. War Army College. It's kind of a weird name, but when they're making reference to what the generals and people in the army would face when they go to the battlefield, and somehow that concept has found itself into, boardrooms, into academia, into business. And obviously my first time hearing about it was when I was doing my MCOM as well, where, when we were talking about business strategy or strategic management, that concept came up quite a bit. And of course, it was in theory, at the time, things were a lot more stable, but still it was something that, we needed to, as business leaders or future business leaders at the time, we needed to be conscious of.
Yeah.
And today, it's a reality. What you and I know as the truth today, tomorrow, maybe something else.
100%.
The geopolitics, things are changing.
The weather is changing
The
consistently.
So this brings me to my burning question, for you. How can brands, adapt in these VUCA times?
When you speak about VUCA being a theory, I first heard about it when I was doing my master's, MBA. I finished my MBA 2012. It was all very theoretical, right? But I think 2020 just brought it into everyone's reality.
Sure.
Having a pandemic in the world that none of us in this generation had ever lived through a pandemic. We didn't know what to do.
We always heard about the 2008 financial.
Yeah, but even then was not as dramatic as 2020. I mean, 2008, I was working at SABC. I was a marketing manager.
Yeah.
I remember things being difficult. I remember things being financially difficult.
Yeah.
But I actually remember also that there was a lot of survival that was built into just everyone. But I think 2020 was just a different kind of fear and survival, and brands had to navigate truly uncharted territories that they had never anticipated. So I think after 2020, the VUCA term is just so much more enhanced. And if you think about the world post-2020, we've never lived through such fast-paced and fast-changing times. And interestingly enough, this week I was in a session where a speaker spoke about how the world has never been this fast. But also going into the future, the world will never be this slow ever again. So
adapt or die.
Adapt or die.
Yeah.
So just taking it back to brands and taking it back to marketers, I think agility is the order of the day. Every day we need to wake up and understand how, as brands or as a specific brand, how we can stay agile and how we can become more agile. And maybe staying agile is not the right phrase, but it's becoming more agile, because the agility we need today is going to need to be enhanced tomorrow, because as we are clearly seeing in the world, change is not about to slow down. Technology is pushing us into new territories every day. There's new AI being launched consistently. It literally is, adapt or die is becoming a reality. The work environment is changing consistently. Requirements from customers are changing consistently.
They expect you guys to answer the phone the first time it rings.
The first time it rings, but also what I've learned and realized from customers over the last 10 years is that they don't expect you to behave just because you sell bread. They don't expect you to behave like a company that sells bread. They expect you to behave like their bank, to know when their bread is about to finish and anticipate their needs and let them and make sure that you're delivering the bread just before they think about you needing bread. So that's why you'll find organizations like 6060 will send you weekly specials. They'll send you updates on Mondays on what things are on special, because they're anticipating your need to replenish your groceries. Probably sometimes before you've even realized, actually, I need to replenish my groceries for the week. So it's about that agility of anticipating customer needs and changing with the needs as the needs constantly change.
Interesting. So in terms of, obviously, you highlighted that the V actually in the VUCA speaks to rapid change, in consumer requirements in obviously the market, you know, is there a place for brand partnerships that'll sort of help marketers or brands to respond also rapidly?
100%. So I like the discovery model of co-creation, just as an example of a South African brand, where they're not necessarily just selling products to their customers that address a need, but they are partnering with their customers to reduce the need for those for the claim, so to speak.
Got you.
If you think about how they treat vehicle insurance, for instance, by putting a device in your car that helps you learn your driving style, anticipate potential things that you can do better, they assist you as a client to claim less. Same thing with their health products. If you're on their medical aid, you get discounts when you go to the gym, because if you're healthier, you're less likely to be sick, and therefore it's
but we get injured. Especially us runners.
There's lots of injuries in running. That's very funny because growing up I did martial arts. I did karate. And I always laugh at
black belt.
I actually stopped at black belt. I did. And I always laugh at people and say, in all the years I did karate, I never got as injured as people who play netball and who run. Like, guys, what are you getting hurt from?
Sure. Wow.
So the value of co-creation and really just looking at how, as a brand, we're not sitting in our boardrooms working alone, but how are we bringing in our customers in this co-creation, whether it's through research, whether it's through even things like programmatic advertising, where we are understanding our customers' needs based on what they interact with. I really do think that as brands, we need to open ourselves a bit more to co-creation, creating with other partners and working with other partners to essentially can benefit from the value that we create.
Interesting. Then, obviously, we talked about co-creation partnerships. South Africa is a very unique, I'd say, country, but obviously one that sort of operates within a global framework. So is there a thing or two that local brands can do, to respond to global changes,
I think there's a lot that we can do to react to global changes. But actually what's very interesting about South African brands that you see when you look at case studies of what's happening around the world is that we're very advanced and maybe we don't have good PR. As we build these brands, our internal PR is not as good as it should be as brands in South Africa, as a country. There's a lot of agile response to international trends that, if you look at our banking systems, there are systems around the world that don't even match up to the advanced banking systems we have in South Africa, where we can spend years without walking into a branch because everything is either done online or through mobile. And you find even developed economies who are not where we are in terms of our banking systems. So there's a lot that we are already doing just in terms of being advanced and in terms of anticipating global trends and even just weather trends. I mean, right now I'm in the insurance space and I'm hearing of some of the thinking that's going into underwriting, where they're anticipating weather trends, where they're anticipating and the understanding of specific areas that might be prone to fires, prone to flooding, and how we can mitigate that for our customers, but also how we can write that into the insurance that we offer. That for me is just like smart agility. It's showing that as brands, we are not waiting for the world to happen to us, but we actually are working every day to really anticipate what is potentially changing and happening, but also offering our customers the best in the world.
Sure. That's very talking about insurance and AI. Have you guys started seeing or implementing certain changes in that space?
So from the product space, there's a lot of stuff that's going into cybersecurity, because as much as AI is cool, we can all go into ChatGPT and figure out how to have a better CV. Or how to write that email to your boss or that report on
How
ChatGPT.
many of those do you get?
ChatGPT.
If you ever received an email and be like, there's no way you tap
No,
off.
fortunately,
You'll write an email that reads like this.
Fortunately, the typos in my world are very authentic.
Okay.
And they're writing their own emails, and I can see that this was well written from their tone and language.
Okay.
But I've been in an environment where I've looked at a document and I thought, you didn't write this. There's no way you wrote this. Because as wonderful as AI is, there's still something about a human tone and a human voice that you can actually see in how something is developed. But it's also just about how do we use technology like that, but still add our human flair, you know? So AI is great even in the insurance space, because it helps us maybe respond to customers quicker, maybe allow us to respond to claims quicker and service clients quicker. But at the end of the day, you know, the human touch is still very important, because if you phoning and crying because something has happened, you need someone on the other hand to just have the little bit of empathy that
you don't need a robot.
I'm not sure ChatGPT has that kind of empathy yet.
I mean, I saw, especially in the insurance space, they now use AI to make calls, and you answer the phone and say, there's a lady on there that said, hello, how are you? You know, it sounds so scripted. And now you have to prompt it, and AI is just...
I must be honest. I'd love to know what is the drop rate on those calls, where people answer their phone and they hear that voice and listen to the whole. I'd like to really just know what the stats are, because if you're going to interrupt my day, so to speak, by phoning me, I wonder how many people are actually listening and actually taking up the products from those kind of introductory phone calls. I don't have the stats. I'd love to know.
Yeah. So the U in VUCA stands for uncertainty, right? Which makes things quite difficult to, especially in an industry like yours, where you have to forecast and you have to try to predict things almost to the T, right? But in this VUCA world, things are moving fast and they're changing. And sometimes there isn't enough sort of data to make accurate forecasts. So what do you think brands should be doing, you know, to forecast better in a way, if there are any tools even that they can implement too?
You know, it's funny that doesn't... The uncertainty doesn't even speak to just the world of insurance. It speaks to every organization in the world, if you think about it. And unfortunately, uncertainty has to be built into every marketing plan. It has to be built into every profit projection.
So are you saying every brand should be calling Clem Santa and say, hey, what's in your crystal ball?
Whoever their Clem Santa is, because these days I think there are a lot of people who work in the trend forecasting space, whether it's through health or weather, which is becoming a very topical issue. In my previous world, so I worked for MultiChoice for many years, there was a lot of forecasting around how technology is actually changing that space and how consumption of content is changing that space. And there's a lot of trend analysis that is being done and that we need to do a lot more of, because there's uncertainties coming in a lot of ways. But also that's why a lot of brands are no longer linear. You find organizations like MTN don't just sell airtime anymore. They are going into insurance a little bit. They're going into
banking,
financial services, fintech. Because I believe in every space, they are anticipating the uncertainty and trying to address it as best as they can. So every marketing plan, if you're a marketer, cannot be linear. It cannot be... it's not cast in stone.
Sure.
There is so much uncertainty, because look at how trends are changing in such a way that consumers are accepting messages in very different ways. Brands are being slammed for what they believe is a very progressive way of communicating.
Yeah.
And sometimes brands are being slammed for a way of communicating that is not progressive. So it really is about just understanding the tone, reading the room, and anticipating, but also having the reflexes to learn, pull back if you've gone wrong,
Sure.
but also drive messages harder if you believe that the messages are working and they fit into the cultural space that they're landing in.
Yo, so almost you have to be keeping track of how the campaigns are performing in real time and be able to respond accordingly.
And not even just the campaigns.
Yeah.
Read the room. You know, our research teams can't come in every day and just look at an existing set of measures that we're putting in place. They almost need to be anticipating what's happening around the world. What are people saying about the brands in our category as a whole? What are people saying about consumption? And the uncertainty is really in the sense that we're no longer linear brands. We are no longer judged on what are you doing because you're a bank or what are you doing because you're an insurance company. We're now all being judged on what are you doing as a global citizen and what are you doing as a citizen of South Africa. What are the things that your brand is doing to not only answer the issues in your space, but also the issues around the entire country and if possible around the world as well.
Sure. I mean, earlier on, obviously, you talked about, obviously, once you've launched a campaign and you have to sort of keep track of its performance. And so earlier on this year, as the year started, as you know, South Africa is never short of drama. We saw Pick n Pay, came up with an ad featuring Rick Ross. It said their LinkedIn streets on fire. Everybody had something to share. And I wonder if you have an opinion, on that particular campaign. And if you do have, what would you have done differently?
Hey, Pet.
Am I putting you on the spot?
You literally are. It's a very interesting campaign.
Yeah.
It's a very interesting advert. I like Rick Ross.
Yeah.
I like Pick n Pay.
Yeah.
Maybe the messaging was not as clear. Right. Because we all saw the advert. We all spoke about it.
Yeah.
And I'll compare it a little bit to the Jaguar campaign that came out at the end of last year.
It's the rebrand.
That literally set the world on fire. It was a bit more negative in that sense.
Yeah.
But from a Pick n Pay perspective, I think the retail space is really under a lot of competition. And I think everyone is under a lot of competition right now.
Yeah.
And the retail space is under a lot of pressure. Maybe what I would have done differently is looked at what are the things that South African consumers are worried about and what are the things that South African consumers are having sleepless nights about. And maybe I would have taken an approach of speaking and answering to some of that.
Got you.
We love pop culture. We love music. We love characters that speak to the things we do when we let our head down, such as music and so on. But I think it's also important to see how they fit into your brand and how they fit into your brand message. And also at the end of the day, how do they make your customer feel? Once I've watched an advert, how does it make me feel about the brand? And does it actually make me want to take action and go into Pick n Pay and purchase something? Or does it make me feel differently about my purchase options?
Got you.
And that's as much as I'll say about that.
Okay. Cool. I mean, brand purpose is something that I guess, it's very much talked about
Yes.
in our industry, you know. And I mean, I'll give you sort of an example of, say, brand purpose, not necessarily in action, but if you remember in 2020, actually that's when this concept of brand purpose started becoming a thing.
It came to life in 2020.
It came to life,
Yeah.
and obviously, like for example, after the death of George Floyd, you know, that's when this thing called DEI became a thing, and some said, no, it's in our brand purpose, you know, to embrace diversity, equity, and inclusion. 5 years later, there's a new president, and he says, stuff this DEI thing, and all of a sudden, the very brands that claim to have been anchored in the purpose of, you know, promoting equality and inclusion are now, you know, sidetracking from that purpose. Do you think in this VUCA world that we find ourselves in, there's still a place for brand purpose as a concept? That a brand purpose, maybe the follow-up question is, can a brand purpose be agile? You know, depending on who's president or depending on the weather.
No, it shouldn't change on who's president. Maybe it can change on the weather, because weather impacts us all as organizations. I mean, this week alone in Johannesburg, there was so much flooding. People were taking pictures of what is generally streams looking like rivers flowing through their backyards.
Sure.
So definitely brand purpose needs to be agile. But before it becomes agile, brand purpose needs to be authentic. If your brand purpose is authentic, it will not change based on who's running the country, because it's authentic to the service you want to provide to your customers.
Yeah.
Look at companies like Outsurance. The giving something out to customers, which speaks to pointsmen on the side of the road, which speaks to how they have built themselves around. You always get something out.
Yeah.
That is for the benefit of, number one, their customers. Number two, the South African public. And it really just speaks to the fact that if you are one of their customers, there's benefit in there for you.
Wow.
That doesn't need to change based on who's running the country. That doesn't have to change based on where the mood of the pop culture and so on is moving to. So I think even in the US, brands that are changing their DEI plans based on who's the president were not authentically focused on that in the first place. It's the same as sustainability, ESG. Brands that are focused on weather and protecting against weather changes, if they're authentic to that, then they'll work towards that. So, for example, Santam, the company I work for, has a program called P4RR, which is partnering for risk and resilience. What that does is they work with local governments and municipalities to clean out stormwater drains and those kind of things, which ultimately speaks to their CSI. But more than that, it speaks to protecting citizens against flooding, all of those things that impact us based on the weather. But that doesn't have to change based on who's running the municipality, because ultimately it benefits the people who live in that area, the people that are insured, and the citizens. So if brands are authentic to their brand purpose, and if they live through their brand purpose, and yes, it does need agility, because you can't have a brand purpose that lasts for 50 years, because the world has changed in those 50 years.
The needs of
the customers have changed over the 50 years. But if your brand purpose is really around protecting or preventing risk or giving something out, you'll always find something to give, right? You'll always find something that your customers can get value from, or the country can get value from. It doesn't have to change. It can move with the times.
Wow. Interesting. Also, I see in some of the examples that you share, you mentioned your competitors quite a bit. You guys love each other like that in that industry.
Well, I think it's business. It's competition all around. But more than competition, I'm just the kind of person who looks at the world holistically. Yes, of course, my loyalty is to the company I work for.
Of course.
But at the end of the day,
but also if
my eyes are open. I'm a marketer in South Africa.
Yeah.
I look at brands across the board. I consume as much as I can of the brands and what they put out. So for me, it's not a case of just having a view that is only encompassing of where I sit on a day-to-day basis. But it's really around where's the world moving to? What are the trends? What are people doing? If I sit with customers, I want to know more about their lives and more about their consumption patterns, because ultimately that will help us build a better brand and build a brand that is responsive to the impact that is happening to people. And if we see something that some of our competitors are doing and other brands for that matter are doing, let's learn from it.
And I think obviously, like you say, you don't operate in an island.
You don't.
And one day it will be interesting to see direct competitors. I think we also see it on social media, where competitors start to maybe engage on a common sort of topic, and that speaks to, I guess, brands also forming their own community.
Exactly.
For lack of a better way, that co-creation you're also talking about.
Exactly.
Earlier on, does also come to life. My second last question, really, Mrs. Soivala. Inkonzo VUCA. How can marketing leaders foster a culture of creative problem solving to navigate, the challenges of VUCA?
So, a creative
problem solving.
Yeah. I think as marketers and business leaders, for that matter, it's firstly about accepting that we don't have all the answers, and that the answers can come from anyone in the room.
Sure.
The answers can come from our customers. The answers can come from brands that have nothing to do with us.
Sure.
And that's why I think for me it's important to know and see what best practice looks like in other industries. It's not always about our industry. Creativity especially comes when we are not under pressure. Creativity comes when we allow ourselves to relax. I know that sounds like a very strange thing to say.
Yeah.
But if you've seen, you're a runner.
Yeah.
Have you seen how when you're running, you always find solutions to some of the things that might have been troubling you? When you're sitting relaxed on a Saturday afternoon, sometimes you find the answer to that email that you've wanted to write for the whole week, but you just didn't have the language for it.
That's it.
When we don't put ourselves under pressure to have all the answers, that's when the answers come. And when we share the problem, either in the team or amongst other functional teams, that's when the solutions might come up that the guy from IT might be thinking about it very differently to the marketing team who are sitting there trying to answer it all.
Sure.
Because they're under pressure and their KPIs are demanding.
Yeah.
That's why opportunities to sit with your customers, whenever it's possible to sit with your customers, are so important, because your customers are not thinking about your problems 24/7. And when there's an opportunity to hear from your customers, to test ideas with your customers, I mean, there's things like product testing, ad testing that we just don't give enough investment into. Sometimes we don't give enough time into. That can really help us to look at things differently and to hear from our customers. For example, if you're designing a product for SMEs, it doesn't make sense to just sit down with SMEs and understand what are the issues, what are the problems that they're dealing with on a daily basis, so that your product speaks to that. So I think the best creativity comes from people that are not directly involved with the problem sometimes, because they don't have the pressure to answer the problem. So spread your community in that sense. It might speak to co-creation, but it also speaks to just hearing from different spaces, and the best ideas don't necessarily have to always come from the leader or the direct team that is sitting in marketing.
Yeah. Interesting. So if you were to create a VUCA survival toolkit, for brands, what is that one unconventional item that will be in your toolkit? What is that one thing that you think brands should have or do in this VUCA times?
They should listen.
Sure.
Brands should listen.
So brands should have ears.
Brands should have ears.
Yeah.
I've spoken about agility a lot.
Yeah.
But if you're a listening brand, you'll be an agile brand. As I said, that when you create a marketing plan, your marketing plan should have so much room for uncertainty. And if you understand the pressures that the business world is looking at, is facing, when you understand the pressures that customers are facing, if you listen to some of the things that they're giving you feedback on, you'll be in such a better place to respond to that. At the end of the day, the reason why our customers move brands, the reason why our customers look for alternative solutions is because they find answers in those spaces. If they're not being heard, consistently not being heard, they start looking for alternatives, right? And that's what then starts killing our revenues. That's what starts killing it's what causes churn. We lose customers and so on. It's really not listening. So if there's one thing that as an organization we can do better, any organization, any marketing team, it's listening to internal stakeholders, listening to customers. And that's when you are able to start responding to some of those things. Gotcha. Doesn't necessarily mean every single thing that is being said you can respond to immediately, or that you should even respond to immediately. But if you're listening, you can anticipate trends. You can anticipate where the shift is going. You can anticipate what are some of the reasons why people are leaving you. For example, if a brand is deemed to be expensive and they're not listening to their customers, eventually their customers leave for cheaper alternatives, right? Because if you're constantly saying you're expensive, it means you're not showing value, number one. Or it means just the economic times that are just difficult for customers and you're not responding to them.
Gotcha.
Listening.
Lalelani, marketers people don't always be talking. Exactly. And I guess sometimes, we get so used to our own voices and we're so stuck to our own sort of convictions that we fail to see or to listen to what else is happening.
5-year objectives. We've got a plan that we need to stick to as a business. We've got objectives, our KPIs. So we all get so bogged down in what we need to deliver over a period of time, or that the business says we need to deliver, that we stop hearing what the people we're delivering to are actually saying to us. Because it's all good and well for all of us to agree in a boardroom that we're doing what we need to do.
Sure.
But if the people we're servicing don't see the value in what we are bringing them, or if the people we're servicing are saying great service but make it cheaper, or great service but make it more flexible, great service but do this, and we're not hearing those things, the agility will come from a competitor who will be willing to answer to all of those things.
Interesting stuff. It wouldn't be the Pattern Brands podcast if you don't do the Pattern Brands quiz. If you don't test your brand knowledge.
This is where I go, cut.
So we have 5 questions. Right? And if you get it right, you get a slap. No, get a pat, sorry.
Yes, you get a pat.
If you get it wrong, you get a slap.
Okay.
Right, I'm going to start. I think this one is quite easy. Um, what is the name of a former politician that now joined Power FM?
Oh, thank God. Dr. Mbuyisendlozi.
Oh my goodness, the People's Bay.
Yes.
Okay, that came out. I didn't even need to give you
Any more clues?
any more clues or
Keep all of them that simple, please.
any more clues or options rather. Okay. Let's see if you keep up with your peers in the industry. Black Ad, the organization Black Ad, Cans, run by Peter Oguribo, who once came here on the podcast.
I know Peter very well.
Yeah, I'm sure he's knocking on your door saying, hey.
I hope he doesn't see this.
Well, yeah, Fisha, you and I both, brother.
Hustling.
Yeah, we always. So yeah, they recently published a list of people that they call DARE. They say it's Dream, Act, Reimagine, and Empower. So spotlighting, visionary Black executives in agencies and obviously on client side, right? And I'm gonna give you three names, and one of them is not on the list.
Oh God!
But let me give you more context. South African marketers.
The one person I remember from that list is actually from Nigeria.
Oh my goodness! So from a South African perspective, we have Gugu Mthembu from Telkom. Sister Kumalo,
African Bank.
Joy Matebe.
Definitely did not see a Joy Matebe. I'm sorry if you're on Joy. My apologies.
Who did not make it to the list?
Joy. I don't remember seeing that name. I feel like I didn't see Sbusiso on the list. I feel like I didn't see Sbusiso on the list. He's top of mind because I was looking at the African Bank stuff at Fashion Week. I don't think I remember seeing Sbusiso on the list. My apologies, Sbusiso, if you're on the list, but I don't remember seeing him.
And you remember seeing Joy Matebe?
I don't. I must be honest, but I think I might not have seen Sbusiso. Gugu, I'm sure I saw.
Yeah.
But I don't remember seeing Sbusiso.
So you're choosing Sbusiso?
Yes, and I think he's top of mind because of the African Bank Fashion Week thing that I saw this week.
You get a slap. Who's Joy Matebe?
So I totally thought there's somebody new. Okay. See, trust my instincts. Trust my instincts.
Yeah, they caught you.
Yeah, trust my instincts because I'm like, sorry, Joy, who's that? But okay.
Yeah. Okay. Let's look for another question.
Tricky question.
This one may not be tricky. So who's the founder of Legends Baba?
Oh, I always see him.
Let me give you
posting.
3 names.
Yes, please give me 3 names.
I see him posting on LinkedIn. Is it Daryl James? Sheldon Thatcher? Or is it Dion Van School?
It's Sheldon Thatcher. I always see him posting, running, and all those things. I definitely know who it is.
Okay, so now it's what? 2 out of...
No, it's 3. Oh, yeah, 2 right.
Yeah.
But yeah.
2
out of 3.
2 right. 2 right. Let me look for another question.
Don't make it difficult.
Which model of the BMW that is produced only in South Africa for the global market?
The right-hand drive X3.
Even the left hand.
Even the left hand?
Yes.
Is it? Okay, I definitely knew it was the
So
X3.
except for the M Sport, but I had the privilege of going to
Roslyn.
the factory, and I saw them being.
Oh, I knew there was the X3, but I always thought it was the right-hand drive. However, this week there was also an interesting discussion on social media about why is it so expensive if it's made in South Africa?
Yeah, but I heard the MD saying they'll find ways to make the cars cheaper,
especially with the market focusing so much on the Chinese manufacturers and cheaper models coming from China.
Yes, yeah,
It's affordability. It's about listening to people. People want features, but they don't have the 1 million rand for a BMW.
Yeah, but then they'll drive a Cheeto.
Well, if the budget says yes, you will drive a Cheeto.
You can't drive a
budget.
You can't drive a BMW for the price of.
If all you have is 700,000 and BMW doesn't have a option for you, but Cheeto has a fully spec'd option for you, you'll drive the Cheeto.
Yeah, so I'm pretty sure you also saw the stats around just luxury cars in South Africa in general, how they've dropped.
Because people are making that choice, right? People are strained financially, so you'll go for the cheaper option that you can afford.
Okay, let's ask you another question. Let's see.
That is reasonably answerable.
Let's see how if you keep up with the agency client space. Which agency just parted ways with Nando's?
Oh no.
After a good decade of the relationship.
Totally exposed. I have no idea.
Okay, let's be kind.
I saw the agency that just won Take a Lot this week.
Because
it's our agency as well. Happened to see that.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I did not see the Nando's one. I'm not sure.
Yeah. Okay, let's give you some options.
Please give me options.
Let's give you some options.
This one. Shem.
Was it Duma Collective? MSC Sachi? Able? Or was it TBWA?
You said after how long of the relationship?
10 years.
Must be MSC Sachi. Because I know Nando's was at TBWA many years ago. If it's still there, then it would be it's longer than 10 years. So I'll take MSC Sachi Able. Also because Duma Collective, I would have known if they were working on Nando's and I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So I'll take MSC Sachi Able.
Okay. You get a patch.
So that's how many? 3 out of 5.
Tawag?
Yay! At least it's more than 50%. So you can't slap me, but it's a small pet.
Yeah, it's very tiny little,
just a tiny
2-year-old pet from my daughter. Thank you so much. You're a great sport. So, any parting shots, any message of encouragement to particularly young professionals who are trying to carve their own path, in this industry? If there's one piece of advice you'd share with them.
Passion. Marketing is a fun space. Marketing is a fun job. Don't let the budgets bog you down. No, many people complain about budgets in marketing and spreadsheets. In all reality, marketing is fun. If you spend the time getting to know your customers, understanding your customers, and understanding the value that your brand is giving in the market and giving to customers, you'll have fun. But just have a passion for what you do. People always say, it was so much fun working at MultiChoice because they see TV and they see celebrities. And I was like, MultiChoice is a company like any other. How are you able to work in insurance? Are you not bored? And I said, I bring the fun wherever I go because the fun is in understanding my customers.
Gotcha.
The fun is in understanding my products. The fun is finding creative ways to answer the problems that the company is facing. You could put me in a mine tomorrow. I will find that fun because I bring the fun in terms of how I bring the passion and understanding of the business that I'm in. So don't always look for fun and excitement from other places. You bring it in terms of the passion that you bring to the job that you do.
So look within.
The answers are all within.
And a message to your peers, in this VUCA world that we find ourselves in.
Hey,
what have you got? What have you got to say to your peers, who are also, looking at the P&L and looking at, all these challenges that we operate in, and some of them are feeling like, maybe I must hang.
Yeah. You're not on your own. And I think that is anytime I attend sessions where there's other marketers, where there's other people just going through the same kind of business problems, I hear such identical problems that I feel comforted in the sense that we're all fighting the good fight, right? You're not on your own, and therefore find a community of people and like-minded people that you can bounce ideas off, that you can vent to sometimes if you need to vent. But the problems just, they don't go away. They just take different forms. And you are not the problem. I'd like to think you're not the problem. The environment is throwing stuff at us. Right? And therefore, it's how we respond to those different things that are happening.
Got you.
But also just take the time to look at the world around you, because the answers are not always going to come from our organization. The answers are not going to come from our industry all the time. Sometimes they come from the most interesting different spaces. So we're not on our own, and take the time to also relax and rest, because we also overwork ourselves. We also take on a lot, because in the process, we hope that the answers will come from that. But actually, I think the answers come in that quiet space when we're not running around trying to find the answers.
Yeah. Interesting. Do you do yoga?
No. Interestingly enough, 2025 was the first time I actually went into a yoga class.
Interesting. Because now I can see that you are zenning now.
I'm zenning now, but I'm a very aggressive girl. I've always been into martial arts. I've done Krav Maga. I ran for a while. So no, I've never been a yoga person. Only went for the first time in 2025 and did only 2 classes so far.
Wow,
so no, unfortunately.
But the year just started, so hopefully
I can continue.
You do more, You do
so
more.
I'm trying to find my zen. I'm rather the keep running. I'm trying to find my zen. Wow. Definitely not. Wonderful. I can't claim it yet.
Great stuff. But there's someone watching, say, okay, I hear you. I like your mind. I'd like to connect. I'd like to know more or probe further questions. What is the best way that people can connect with you?
Click on the bio. I think LinkedIn is the easiest one that I might tend to engage on and look at probably more frequently. So I am Nondumiso Mabece on LinkedIn.
Double barrel.
Well, not in real life, just on LinkedIn. Especially this week after this whole debate about double barrels. Actually, it's so funny. It just shows how old I am. I've been married for 18 years. I had LinkedIn, I think, probably from the beginning. And the only reason why I kept my maiden name there so that colleagues who knew me by my maiden name could find me.
That's why people used me.
Yes. But so no. Nondumiso Mabece, but yes, I am Nondumiso Mabece in every other forum.
Got you. Got you. Great stuff. Thank you so much for making the time.
Wonderful time chatting with you.
If you're watching, this podcast for the first time and you're on YouTube, please don't forget to subscribe. The only way we can grow is if you subscribe, share, and like. And also like leave a nice comment, because that's what keeps us going. The 2025 Yobas have entries are open. So if you know a youth-owned brand that is deserving of recognition and to be celebrated, you can nominate it via the Top 16 Youth-Owned Brands Awards website, which is www.top16yoba.africa. www.top16yoba.africa, and you can submit your nominations. And from me, Pat Mahlangu, ngithi inarhailale.
Pat. It's Pat on Brands. Watch how you branded, man. A pat on the back is a pat from the man. Better be branded, man. A pat from the pat is a pat on the brand.